20 people waiting right now. And we'll give it just a few minutes. Kenyatta, maybe a minute after 12. And
12. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right. We should see some people start jumping in any minute.
Coaches, we'll give about one more minute and let everybody get logged on. It's good to see all you guys' faces. And gals. Sorry, Coach Jones.
How'd that gasser go, Kenyatta?
Man, I drove right by the stadium, and it clicked that we're not supposed to do there, so I just shut it down. I went ahead and came to the coffee shop.
Lead by example, brother. Mike, I don't even know what you're doing.
I'm on the road.
Yeah. Keep your eyes up.
Brennan, I'm wearing an Adams State hat, just so you know, since you're already cracking on me.
I was just making sure you're not going to be under any violations or sanctions or anything like that. I want to look out for you.
Yeah, I'm just trying to recruit for my son.
I didn't think you guys were undeniable. I think that's what that's called, right? When you're in
like
Under Armour school, you're undeniable or something like that?
If you are.
Well, coaches, we'll get started. I'm going to get everyone muted. That way we can keep the background noise to a minimum. I'm in Vian. You might hear some ducks quacking or some horns honking down here on Main Street. But we want to welcome you to this timeout series. And basically what it is that Oklahoma FCA, we got together and we designed this series for the coach. We want to connect you to our staff, and it's an unprecedented time right now, and for all of us in sports and in life. And we're going to have conversation with coaches across our state and our FCA staff across our state. And basically, what it is that we want to lead you on a journey of transformation. With vision and accountability for you and your family and your team. And it was been our prayer and everything that we've done at this point of how we can communicate with the coach to find a way that we can collectively minister to your hearts and your family. And this is what we came up with. Timeouts, man, they're critical, so critical in all of sports. And we're taking a timeout right now from everyday life that we're doing. Constantly doing in the springtime at this point. And during this time, I basically want you guys to just listen in and lean in. And we got a chat session over here that's going on that our staff is going to monitor. If there's things that we can help you with or send to you or resources that we can get to you, we want to be available for that. And like I said earlier, we're just going to mute everyone. And then the people that I need to talk are going to talk. And that's probably going to just be Coach Bill Blankenship. But this virtual huddle will meet every Thursday at 12 p.m. noon. And we want to keep this thing going as long as we possibly can. So I'm going to introduce Bill and we'll get started. Many of you know him, but Bill Blankenship is a former TU quarterback and head football coach of the 6A Owasso Rams. He has been a head coach for over 20 years. Bill and his wife, Angie, has 3 sons. And when I read this, that all of them played college football and all of them coached. I mean, I hope that for my sons as well, and hope that they'll want to be a coach someday too. But Bill's name is etched in the history books of high school and college in the state of Oklahoma. The only 11-win season in TU football history. I don't know why he's still not coaching there, but 11-win season at football at TU should make sure everyone knows that he's the only one that's ever done that in the history of football at TU. And I could read tons of accolades of Bill Blankenship, but I feel like Bill's greatest asset in his life as a coach and a husband is having intentional transformation of his players and his coaches. And whenever I look at Bill Blankenship and I look at what we're trying to do here with this timeout series, he was going to be our first coach that I get to talk to, because just over my conversations with Bill and what he's meant to my life and my family, and little do you guys know that he has Vian blood in him. But in this timeout series, you know, it's critical that we all take a timeout and look at our lives and look at our family's life and look at what a timeout actually means. And we came up with these. We got to huddle up, coaches. We got to catch our breath. We got to breathe. But just like we bring our teams in and just calm everything down, we have to calm the storm down, and we have to evaluate where we are right now in life. And we got to make adjustments, and we got to get focused on what we're going to do when we go back to everyday life as we know it as coaches. And the biggest thing that I like, that when Bill said this is just kind of like that charge. I don't send my players after the timeout to go back out there and lay down. We got to get back in the game and constantly build what we're doing now in the off season and this time out in our life to be better when we get back to it. So, Coach Bill, you had a major timeout in your life, and obviously it would change the perspective of any coach's life or any family's life. I want you to share your story and your major timeout that you had in your life with the coaches today.
Kenyatta, first of all, thank you, and won't go into this too deep, but my father was the coach that restarted football in Vian after World War II. And so we have that connection, and we like to share that, and I appreciate that. You know, I got a chance to coach at my old high school, Spiro, which is just down the road from Vian. And during that time, I was kind of a young guy. We had three young boys at home. And I'll give you the short version, but it was summertime, and I had a knot in my neck, and I went to the doctor. Actually, I didn't go to the doctor for a long time, and finally my wife and mom had warned me out enough to go to the doctor. And he said, I think you just got a swollen salivary gland, no big deal. So I start the season, and like coaches, he basically said, you ought to come back in a month and let's double check it. And like us coaches, you know, we do our thing. I just went into football season and didn't even come up to breathe until December. And at the urging of my mom and my wife, I went back to the doctor in December, and he's like, is that what I saw you for in July? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, I don't know what it is, got to come out. Short version, they diagnosed me with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a type of leukemia, type of cancer. And so for the next 6 to 8 months, about 8 months, I guess, I went through chemotherapy and had a couple of surgeries and did all kinds of stuff. I actually wrote a little article for the Tulsa World last week that was talked a little bit about that, and that's kind of what started this conversation. But I think back to my coaching days, Kenyatta, and how that impacted, how cancer impacted me. You know, I didn't see things the same. I didn't see my family the same way that I had done before. Things that I had taken really for granted, I didn't take for granted as much. I kind of understood my mortality a little more. You know, to say that it scared me, made me anxious is absolutely true. But it also caused me to lean in and to draw on my faith and to, I think, get closer to my family. And so all those things, I believe, impacted me for life after cancer. And, to say that I don't see things quite as cut and dried, and man, I don't take the losses. I'm still competitive, dude. I'm just telling you, I hate to lose. I don't want to go, but it's not like somebody telling you got cancer. It's not like somebody telling you, you may not see your kids grow up. So I think perspective gives you a very healthy place. And one of the reasons we're talking about this is because, this coronavirus deal is causing us all to take a time out and to think about how we're going to be when we go back. So maybe we can go from there.
Coach, I've just kind of seen what you're doing in your program during this timeout and how you're truly impacting your players, obviously with the workouts and stuff like that, and having them check in. But what is one thing that you're doing now to continue building relationships with your players?
Well, I think that's the key thing. And I was just talking to Coach Graham, my right-hand man, today, and Antonio was telling me how many of his players and moms and dads that he's touching base with regularly. And it really impacted me because he's way outpacing me. And I ought to be the guy that's setting the pace. But I've got coaches on this staff that love relationships and reaching out with their players. And I just think we've got to be more intentional about it. When I got fired at Tulsa Kenyatta, and I want to correct one thing you said, there was one other 11-win season. It's just we won 11 and a championship, a conference championship that year. So, just saying. But when I got fired at Tulsa, one of the things that I thought often about was what would I do differently if I knew that had been my last year or my last time around. And the thing that hit me over and over, and I was just telling Angie last night, is I would have spent more time in the locker room, sitting next to my players. I would have spent more time having conversations with my players that were not about football. And that's what I missed, man, when I wasn't there anymore. Now, you got to win enough to get to stay. I mean, we all know all that. Yeah. But, gosh, to be more intentional about how I invest with them and my family and all those kind of things. I think if we looked at this timeout, this COVID-19 thing that's going to go down in history, if we thought that last year was our last year to ever get to coach, what would we have done differently?
Wow.
And now let's think about how we want to change that when we move forward.
Man, that's
God
awesome,
willing.
Coach.
Yeah, God
yeah, that's awesome. So, Coach, I'm a coach, and I love building relationships, obviously, and you're separated from your staff, and really can't have that camaraderie. Is there things that you're doing as a head coach, or even a coach that just loves building men? Is there things that you're doing with your staff that really behind the scenes that we never get to see?
Oh, Kenyatta, probably not anything more than a lot of you guys are doing. I do the football side. I've got my coordinators trying to work on cut-ups and doing what can we do to teach our guys that haven't been here. I'm in a really interesting situation in that, and I saw Bobby Klink had checked in earlier, and Bobby left us to go to be the head coach over in Sand Springs and took a couple of young guys with him, and those guys have opened up some spots. So I'm sitting with 3 or 4 new coaches going to be on staff, and I'm as concerned about getting them engaged in the culture as it is with the players as well, because I just think it's all a mirror. What we do with the players has to start with the staff. And so I'm really trying to focus on my staff right now and working with those guys and staying connected. And then I'm just blessed because I got good ones, man, and they're reaching out and doing what they need to do with the players. I need to do more. And I would just encourage you, not to promote it too much, but I'm wearing my Adam State hat for my son, Josh, and he posted a deal yesterday on Twitter. You guys ought to pull it up. And he's kind of gone to another level and challenged me about some things that they're doing with their team, but also he's just posting it, and they call it affirmations, and they're doing affirmations right now instead of waiting until the season and waiting till they get back on campus. And so I just think there are things that we can learn from each other about how to invest in that third dimension. 3D coaches talk about all the time. How do we plan and how do we organize and what can we do now so that when we get in season, we're not just covered up with all the X and O stuff.
Yeah, that's good. And coaches, I want to encourage you now to get in that chat box and ask some questions so we can get some of your questions answered. But coach, this is the last question I have before we go to a kind of a final timeout time and our last segments. But you talked about the word culture, and that word gets thrown around a lot in sports. I want to talk about this word and its legacy. We talk about the timeout that you had with cancer, and I know that had to change your perspective, obviously, as a coach. But when it's all said and done, Coach Blankenship, and we're talking about the legacy of your career, your life, what to you, what do you want that to look like when it's all said and done?
Ooh, I think that's hard to crystallize for me. Ultimately, I want the spiritual impact we know that's going to be the thing that lasts for eternity.
Yes.
So, that's the piece that I pray is coming across, that people are going to see. I don't think it's something that you have to have in every conversation. I think more impactful for me have been the guys that I see just being consistent as years go by, and they're just consistent, and they don't have to say, hey, I'm a believer and I'm a Christian all the time, because you see it in the way they operate and it just comes out. I would like to think that there would be coaches that say, you know what, there are just some things about Coach Blank's legacy that I want to continue. And that would be anything that we're doing on the spiritual side of trying to reach these guys and say that ultimately, just like, man, again, but just like right now, we don't know when the last season is.
Right.
And so what are we going to do if we don't believe that football may last forever? Well, it's not going to for me and you. Denver Johnson, I used to work with him. He would always tell our recruits, football's going to be through with you before you're through with football. And that's true for us as coaches. It'll be through with me before I'm through with it. So what are we doing that are going to last us, carry on? And it's all going to be that eternal stuff that has to do with the Lord, with Christ, with trying to demonstrate, the love he has. I mean, the great commandments: love God and love others as you love yourself. So we talk about loving our brothers.
Man, I appreciate you sharing that. And that's so important as a coach to know where you stand. And that's, I'm going to bring on Chris Kaiser. Chris was obviously a sideline guy whenever you was around there in Tulsa. And we want to bring Chris in for this sideline segment and this final timeout. So, Chris, I want you to come in and kind of, carry us out to a final timeout.
You bet. Kenyatta, thank you so much. And Coach Blank, we had some great times there on the sidelines. And I did understand that 11-win, season. And there was another coach, but they didn't win the bowl game and the championship, So I walked with you during that. And that was some fun times. When you talk about your legacy, coach, and your, the spiritual impact, that's what's most important to us here on staff with the FCA and in Oklahoma with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. We want everybody that's tuned in to understand that relationship with Jesus Christ and how you have that eternal legacy. And if you haven't made that decision to follow Christ,
I think we may have lost Chris. Basically, what Chris was going to share is about the four that we have, and I'm going to bring on Brennan and let him go through this process with our coaches. And Brennan, if you can unmute yourself and just share the floor with our coaches today.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, each and every one of us have a story. We each and every one of us have a testimony to share. And one of the things that I love about Bill so much, and I alluded to it in my comments, but the fact that Bill always makes it intentional to have his staff share their stories, who they are, what they've been through, what they've walked through, what they've come out of, and then the vulnerability that allows as they share that with their team has created such a culture. And I think that that's part of what happens when we talk about culture. And so as a culture for FCA, we've come up with this very, very simple four easy emojis to share the gospel. And I think it's been so effective, so powerful. But the first one, I think it just resonates with students. I think it resonates with athletes and coaches as well. The first one being the heart. And that basically means, hey, God loves you. That all of the love that we experience in this world is only as a result of the love that God gives us. And honestly, love is going to fail us at some point in our lives because we have human relationships. But God's love is perfect. It's without void. It comes unequivocal. You don't do anything to earn it. You can't gain it more or lose it. In Genesis 1:27, it says, so God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female. And how incredible is it to think about the most famous verse of all times talks about love. For God so loved the world that he gave his only one and only son, that whoever believes in him would not perish, but have everlasting life. And the crazy thing about that is that you don't get to earn it. And it's an awesome opportunity to just experience what true love is, the reason why God created us. But there's a problem. And so the second emoji says that sin separates us. And we know it doesn't take any time. If you have kids at home, you understand that sin is real. And you didn't have to teach them how to steal or lie or make up excuses or try to blame somebody else. And we know that because Adam and Eve, the first humans on this earth, lied and tried to hide it, tried to cover it up, that we are all a product of that. And so we come into this world with faults and habits and hangups. And we're all trying to figure out and make sense of it. And it says, for the wages of sin is death, but the free gift of God is eternal life. And that's in Romans 6:23. And what an awesome verse, just because it shows that there is a penalty for your sin. There is something that's going to come out of that. But there is a gift, and God created that gift. He gave us Jesus. And what an amazing gift. But we also know that if there's a gift, that somebody had to provide the gift. And so God said, hey, I don't know how many of you have sons. I have 7 children. And so I have 5 daughters and two sons. And I honestly would never give any of them up for any one of you, even though most of them are adopted or foster children. But God said, that's not my character. That's not my nature. And so he gave up his one and only son to rescue you. And so the third emoticon is that Jesus rescues us. And we know that Jesus came to live a sinless, perfect life. And he could have come at so many things. He could have come as a king, could have come as an architect, and we would have revered him. But he came as a baby, so we would bow low to him. And everybody can relate to what it's like to be a baby, to have vulnerability and innocence. And that's why Jesus came, lived a sinless life, and then eventually spent 33 years on this life and gave his life up for us. He laid it down so that we could have a relationship with the Father, because there had been a gap, but Jesus closed the gap. And so the only question left with that is the question emoji, and that says, hey, will you trust Jesus? Will you accept all of the things that you've heard, that God loves us, that sin separates us, that Jesus rescues us? What are you going to do with that information? I think every single one of us on this earth will have to wrestle with at least one question. What are you going to do with Jesus? The other one is, what are you going to do with your influence? And so I would just say in Romans 10:9-10, it says, if you openly declare that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For it is by believing in your heart that you are made right with God, and it is by openly declaring your faith that you are saved. And so very simply, if that's you, if you're on this call for whatever reason, you just said, hey, I think we're going to be talking about some football or some other kind of coaching method or methodology, and you just say, hey, I do need to know who Jesus is. It's simply nothing more than just asking him. So I'm not even going to lead you in a prayer. I'm not going to have you follow me along with me in a prayer, but I would just tell you that Call on Jesus, man. He's there. He's ready. He's willing. And what better time than to come out of this different and change for entire eternity than to stay the same and to know that you are not secure in eternity or where you stand with Jesus. And so if you have made that decision, if you are going to make that decision today, if in the quiet of your room after you get off this call, you make that decision, you say, man, I need something different. This is the thing I need. Jesus is the only way, the truth, and the life. If you would just text Go FCA to 46322, there's going to become a response that's going to come back to you and say, hey, tell us what kind of decision you made, just so we can connect with you and help walk with you. Because this is not about having you make a decision and saying, hey, you did something, now you're on your own. This is a family. I said it from the beginning, what's up, FCA family, because we truly believe that's a family. And so, man, most important decision you can ever make. And one of the only reasons we share, there's two reasons we share that with you today, is for first and foremost for you, that if you've never made the decision, that's one of the most important decisions you can make. But what an easy, relatable way to share the gospel with your coaches, your staff, and your team, because they relate to it and they understand what it's like to not have hope and to need to know something bigger than themselves. And so thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Brennan, for sharing that. And coaches, that's the most important thing in our life. It's the most important thing in my life. Somebody's pretty loud on here, but one of the statements made in our chat box was from Coach Luch. Coach Luch. And it that's technology for you. He made a statement that we can always get better at showing our face, Coach Blank. What is one way, or give us some ways as a coach that you share and show your faith to your athletes and coaches?
I just think that every day there's there's just ways to talk about the truth of the Bible without having to give scripture, because we're navigating being at a public school. When I was at Tulsa, we didn't have to worry about it as much as a private school. But, we still have to navigate where we are. And I believe that, I can teach biblical truth by not having to tell people it's in the Bible, and you just continue to, we have, and most of you guys that are on here do the same thing. We do, kind of character ed stuff with our team. We're going to come up with themes of the week and different words and different stuff. But we also have a day, usually on Thursday in season, where we get churches to feed our kids, and we tell them they don't have to stay, but if you stay to eat, you got to listen. And that's where we have our chaplain, so to speak. We don't call Rex our chaplain, but he's our director of player personnel. But he's going to share biblical truth with these guys consistently. And so it just goes back to kind of the 3D approach FCA has promoted. Is have a plan, get a plan for how to do these things. Some coaches aren't as comfortable at it as others. And you just got to understand that what we're doing, man, matters. And if you really want to make a difference when we get back on the field and get back in that locker room and get back, just take baby steps. You can't eat the elephant all in one sitting, just one piece at a time. Get a plan for a character word of the week. And it just happens to be stuff that goes through your faith. And I don't think it's as hard as sometimes we make it.
Yeah. Coach, off the field, it's very important for us all, to lead our families as coaches. And what is one thing that you say as a coach that you don't compromise on? Football could never come before it. What is something that you won't compromise as a coach for your family? Wow.
Probably not nearly as much as I need to have. I wish I could say more is what I'm saying to you. One of the things I know that has impacted some of our players before is I remember missing practice to go to the hospital because one of my sons, had to go to the emergency room or was in the hospital for a reason, or my father, and I never realized that that would impact players, that they're like, oh, so you mean that's important. And I think so what we determine that we're willing to put ahead of kind of tells kids more than sometimes our mouth. So when our coaches have had, we've had staff guys recently that had new babies, they're going to miss practice, not just for that day, but I leave it up to them. But some of them have missed for 2 or 3 days, but we cover. Well, what does that teach our players? Family comes first. And so those are the things if you ever ask me, I'm never going to deny you, an opportunity to be with your family to make you be here as a coach. I want you to give me as much as you can, and we got to walk that line. But I guess, family has to come before our coaching.
Appreciate you sharing that. And the last question, then we'll go to some final thoughts. But obviously, you spend a lot of time. I mean, been a coach for well over 20 years and been a successful coach. And but what do you like to do away from the game? What is something that you and Angie may do? I mean, we want to know you as Coach Blankenship, but we also want to know some of the things about you. So what do you like to do when you're away from coaching?
Well, Angie and I like different things, and she likes to ride bikes and play games and do all that kind of stuff. And so right now she's getting a lot of that. So that's been good. The other side of it for me is if you said, what could you do, especially on a hot day? I want to go to a movie, man. I want to prop my feet up. I want a tub of popcorn, and I want to watch movies. I like doing that. It gives me a way to kind of disengage. So consequently, there's an old movie that talks about, I think it was when, was it Phenomena or something like that? But anyway, he kept buying her chairs. And so we talk about when I do things for Angie that are not my favorite thing to do, I'm buying her chairs. And so that's why I go ride bikes and play games, because I want to buy some chairs.
Awesome. Well, Coach, I appreciate you coming on. And obviously, this is going to go through a couple weeks and a few weeks at that. And but my final thoughts are, man, I want to thank you, coaches, for coming on and spending some time out. We want to honor your time and try to get done at 12:30. All you guys know how coaches talk. I mean, it was real hard for me and Coach Blank to get up under 30 minutes.
That's right.
But we appreciate you coming on. We want you to invite your friends, and we're going to have some time where we want to communicate with you too as well, coaches. But we appreciate you coming on. And Coach Blank, man, I'm thankful that you give us this time to share, and this is something that you wanted to do in your heart, and it's something that you allowed FCA to kind of invade your privacy right now. I mean, all we have is time, but thank you for doing that. And we're going to continue this. Obviously, we're going to pray for each and every one of you coaches. Drew is recording this, so we'll have you by name, and we can pray for you and pray for your family. And as we close, I want you to really look at your legacy as a coach, because over the next few weeks, we're going to answer those questions, and we're going to tackle some of the things that we go through as coaches. And one of the big things that Coach Bill talked about in our conference call was, man, just anxiety, and depression and things that coaches may not ever address, and they go through it. I mean, I know some. So we appreciate you, and we're going to go tackle some of the tough things that we never really talk about as coaches. But the main thing is that we want to touch your heart, and we want to go after your heart as a coach, because we know that a coach impacts more people in 1 year than most people do in a lifetime. And that's what Billy Graham says. And right after that is who's coaching the coach. And that's where we come in for each other. And that's what Coach Bill feels that his legacy is to coach, And so we thank you for that. And I'm going to pray and close us out, and we'll stay on for a little while. If any coaches have any questions, maybe 5 minutes or so. And we'll continue this every Thursday at noon. So put it on your schedule, be the same link. share it with your buddies, and get them here, and let's all get better. Let's go close in prayer. Father God, I thank you for every coach that is represented today, and every family and every community. God, I pray that FCA not only would be able to minister off screen, but in the homes and lives of these coaches that are represented today and the coaches that will come in the future. God, I pray that you give us all energy to deal with the questions and the concerns and just everything that separates us from normal life of God. But you've called this time out for a special purpose, God. And I think you called this time out for a special purpose just for these coaches to reflect and look at how they'll get better after this time out, God. We all have to get back in the game soon, but this is a time of preparation and a time to dig in spiritually, God. God, I also pray that every coach here would be refreshed, God, just by the conversations that we have on this timeout series. God, I thank you and I praise you in Jesus' name. Amen. So we'll stay around just a little bit. If you got any coaches that want to ask Coach Blank something that didn't put it in the chat room, or you guys just have some concerns or comments, whatever it is, we'll stay around for about 5 minutes, and then we'll continue this next Thursday. So you can unmute if you have a question. There's Kaz back.
Coach B, tell us a little bit more about what I was asking you earlier about you sharing your stories and having your people share their stories and some of the impact that's come out of that time, not only for your team, but definitely for your coaching staff.
Well, I'll try to give it to you quick, but back in the year 2000, I got involved with a gentleman that came alongside me as a buddy and friend and became one of my best friends. And he brought me into a small group where the first thing he had us do is to just tell our story. He gave us a piece of butcher paper and he said, hey, I want to know the most meaningful things that have happened in your life, both good and bad. What are the things that make you so, and then who have been the most impactful for you, good and bad, and just tell us 4 or 5 or 6 things. And we use that as an outline, and we began to kind of sharing our life with each other, and it opened up the door. So I took it back to our staff at Union, and we began to kind of talk about those kind of things. Who are the 2 or 3 best coaches you ever had, or worst coaches? Who are the other people outside your life, in your life? And so as that evolved over the years, what we have learned is there's a lot of people that won't tell you much. But if you can get them talking about their story, you'll understand each other in a way that you never understood each other before. You might go, look, that dude irritates me, his attitude or the way he carries himself. And yet when I hear his story, I almost always come back to, oh, now I know why he's a little bit jaded, or he's a little bit negative, or he's a little bit, he's the this or that. And I think it's done more to build our staff, both at the University of Tulsa and at Fayetteville and now at Owasso, is we spend a lot of time telling our story, learning our story. And then the second, third year, I ask coaches to share each other's stories with the new guys so that we find out what were the meaningful things about your story that impacted me that I want the new coach to hear. So I just think it's a way for us to come together and to grow with one another. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's
Yes,
great.
sir.
Brent Marley, can you hear me? See if we can unmute him. I want to ask him a question real quick. I think it'd be helpful. You there, Coach?
Got me?
Yeah. Hey, I'm only calling you out because I heard something that you're doing that's really attractive. And I know that there's some other coaches that would love to hear about it. I was talking to Jason Sport at Bartlesville, and he told me that he was doing this and that he started talking to you about it. And I heard that you guys were potentially doing something along the lines of going back into some game film and getting some time or some play that they did a really good job, and then sending that to a kid and just encouraging them in this time when really the only thing you can work on is relationship. And so Jason said, hey, we're just really taking this time to focus on relationship instead of X's and O's and technique and all those things. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, actually, that's Jason's sports idea. I give him the props, but yeah, it's just finding some things positive that the kids did throughout the season last year, and just sending them a couple clips. You know, even if it's an underclassman, freshman, sophomore from a JV game, maybe, and saying, "Hey, you did a great job down blocking here and getting your head across and running your feet," you know, and stuff like that. And then the relational part, you know, Jason and I talked about. It's taken some time. I'm actually, you know, calling everybody on our roster. We send out workouts and stuff for them at home, just, you know, strength stuff, but taking out time to just call them all and check in with them, talk to them, see how their families are doing, see how they're doing spiritually, how they're holding up, you know, just their psyche and all this with being at home and getting along with their siblings. I think that relational part, Brennan, is huge. And, you know, that's how we can win right now and not waste this pandemic. But this pandemic can be a huge thing when we do get back at it, if we do those relational things.
That's really good.
Thanks, Coach. I appreciate that.
I'll call out a coach, Mike Shelton. You have to unmute.
What's going on, man?
I read Mike Kays' article, and you an internet hero now. You're coaching the coach. But tell us what you're doing, Coach, and why you decided to start doing that on social media. Because I know you. I mean, you're a pastor at heart, but not on social media, and you're really in the trenches, and you love players. I mean, you've impacted my son so much. And but what made you want to do that during this time?
Well, man, I just wanted to reach out to coaches, and especially the young guys. You know, that they're just getting into this. They think that all coaching is about is X's and O's and wins and losses. And I just wanted to reach out, and I wanted to coach Christ to them. I've already been trying my absolute best to coach Christ to my players, to the students I have in my classroom, but I wanted to coach Christ to other coaches, and just kind of throw out some things that they may be struggling with. You know, I think that we can all learn from each other. I mean, I've picked up so much today, and I appreciate that, you know, you guys sharing your heart. But I'm not so much a guy that likes to I'm not a selfie guy. I'm not a video guy. But, you know, the big thing was watching my wife over the last 3 years since my son has, you know, been recovering from testicular cancer, just every day. And, you know, part of it's therapy for her, to share with other people about his progress and about his story. And, you know, and others is I see so many people that are reacting to that are going through some of those same situations. And so they can draw strength from that. And I think that as coaches, we can all do that as well. We have to be a little bit vulnerable. We have to share, you know, not just our successes, but we have to share our failures as well. And when we do that, we're going to impact players. We're going to impact other coaches, and you know, maybe give them an avenue to get ahead of the curve where we had to learn maybe the hard way.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Mike. Anybody got any more questions for Coach Blank or any of the things you're doing in your program?
Hey, Kenyatta, this is Nate. Real quick, Coach B, he mentioned his son at Adams State and their affirmations that they're doing. I just glanced at it pretty quickly, and it's pretty cool. So I'll just put Josh Blankenship's Twitter handle on there. You can go check it out. The very first post he has is that coaching affirmation stuff. It's pretty cool. They're calling out their players. They're also calling out their other coaches. So it's pretty cool. So you can take a look at that. I put it on the comments right now.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Thanks, Nate.
Well, you guys. Oh, go ahead.
Hey, just for the guys that are still on here, we want this to be what you want. I mean, there's no agenda here other than we want to be able to encourage coaches. We want to be able to get ready for how to be better when we get back. So if you got ideas, things you would like to see this timeout kind of go towards or ways to make it better, please tell us. We got coaches on here, man. The thing you do is coach. So coach us up. Let's go.
Yes, sir. So yeah, you can, I mean, obviously if we're on social media, send us a message or wherever. My email is pretty easy. It's kwright@fca.org. If you want to send me some questions or anything that you have or need to talk about and, or something that you're dealing with, we want to face adversity and we want to hit it right in the face. That's the only way we know how. We want to attack it. We want to pray about it. And we want you coaches to be better when you go back to your normal life. And that's the only intention that we have. And the one thing that I want more than anything is just the fellowship with you guys, because that's me. I've missed that. I see Lee on there and, see Brett and all these guys that I know, but it's like, we don't get connected that much, So this is a time when we can connect every Thursday at noon. And let's build a fraternity and let's help each other out and let's all get better. And after that, I mean, this state is going to be one of the greatest states ever, not just football or basketball or sports in general, but of families. And that's kind of where we're focused on. But appreciate you guys for showing up. Coach Blank, man, if I could ever, when you come to Vian, I'll take you to Bubba's and buy you a double cheeseburger and,
promise, baby.
and all that
Let's
type
go.
of stuff. And but we appreciate you, Coach, and your wisdom is great. And look forward to next week, coaches. If you have anything, you can shoot me an email, or any of the people that you know that's on the FCA staff, shoot them an email, because we want this to be for you and by you. So thank you for joining us. We'll see you next Thursday at noon.
See you guys.
We'll see you.